Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. And I'm really excited to have Cam Williams with me, and we're going to be discussing the US Open 2022, touching, of course, upon the ATP and WTA side. Cam, first of all, how you doing?
Good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, all good. We were just talking about time differences and US Open coverage, so that's going to be interesting. And of course, yeah, make sure you tune in to Cam's channel for the US Open, and of course here as well if you want. But yeah, remember to hit the like button and subscribe as well. But let's get into it. So I guess let's talk about the ATP side first, because I feel like the WTA side is going to be pretty crazy. It's so open. Even on the ATP side, to be fair, it's pretty open as well, given, well, we don't know 100% if Djokovic is going to be playing yet or not. But I think things pretty much are pointing and indicating towards the fact that he's not going to. We can start with that, actually. What's your prediction for whether Djokovic is going to participate, I guess, or not, if you had to say?
I'm going to say he's not going to play unless there's some miracle that happens. It's like 99% not playing, but it's just that 1%. That's the thing. It's like he could play, but he's like, people are writing him off. People are saying, like, I think the Rafa fans are saying that no, he's not playing. He's not playing. He can't play. And I understand that they're a bit scared, but I think I don't think he's going to play. But
yeah,
I would like him to play. That'd be kind of very interesting if he just last minute gets thrown in. But I don't think they're going to let him in the country. So
yeah, I'm a Rafa fan, but I want him to play. Look, you want to see the best players there. Like, I'm a tennis fan first and foremost, so obviously, like, let's put aside all the the political and whatever other kind of noise around it. But obviously, I want to see him play. We want to see the best players there, and he is one of, if not potentially the best player kind of around right now. I know his ranking doesn't indicate that, but there's a reason for that, because he hasn't been able to play many matches, I guess. But yeah, I can almost imagine and picture like Djokovic in the airport, like doing like volleys with like his coach, like waiting for like news of the US Open, like they've cordoned off like a little area, and he's doing it in a Serbian, like, I don't know, actually. I don't think he's based out of Serbia anymore, though, is he? Isn't he in Mallorca or something, Monte Carlo or somewhere?
Yeah, somewhere in Spain. I think he moved to Spain.
Yeah. So into enemy territory. Nadal's there. Can you imagine?
I think he'll leave it to the last minute. So I think, because what I was getting asked last week was a lot of he's already withdrawn, he's out. I'm like, well, he's not out because he's still on the list, and he's probably going to be in the draw. So I reckon we're going to have an Indian Wells situation unless he pulls out in the next 48 hours. It'll be an Indian Wells situation where we sort of get that he's in the draw and everyone's like, I thought he wasn't playing, and then he'll pull out last minute and everyone will get upset that the draw's ruined. But I mean, you can't really blame him because he's going to leave it as long as possible until the last possible moment to be able to play, because who knows, he might pull out and then the next day they go, oh, by the way, you can actually play. He's so he's going to do he might do a little dodgy and keep it right up until the last minute, and probably annoy people if he pulls out on like the Sunday. But I mean, he's going to do everything he can. He has to. There's no choice.
Yeah, I mean, people are kind of comparing it to the Zverev situation, but with Zverev, obviously, he's injured, right? Like, he physically can't play. So he's pulled out, and rightly so, before the qualifiers. So that then, obviously, it's Zverev for the qualifiers, and then someone gets moved up to the main draw. Like, that's understandable. But for Djokovic, he still has, as you said, that 1% of, like, hope. So he's really going to push it. He's going to really run it close as much as he can until it's like, okay, I'm definitely, I've got the confirmation. I definitely 100% cannot play. So I'll pull out. But who knows? If he plays, fantastic. If not, I think it'll still be a fantastic tournament. But it's just a bit of a shame that obviously we're not going to have one of the best players playing. I guess we can touch upon Medvedev first, because he's the reigning US Open champion. Hasn't probably had the year that a lot of people might have expected, given that after that marquee victory, first Grand Slam, beating Djokovic, stopping him from winning the kind of the slam. It was like, oh, okay, Medvedev's come, that's it, he's here to stay. He's going to dominate on the hard courts, and then made the final of the Australian Open. And you're like, oh, okay, favorite against Rafa, 2 sets love up, loses it, and then it was after that, it was like the press conference and mentally just seemed a little bit off. And obviously there's some external factors going on as well that probably haven't helped, politically, but with him, like, have you been a little bit surprised about like his form going into it as well? Like, one lost Carbos, but then lost to Kyrgios. I guess understandably,
Yeah.
Kyrgios was in great form, but then lost to Tsitsipas last week, which I thought was more surprising because like he never lost to Tsitsipas in an outdoor hard court match. He'd lost one indoor hard, like an ATP Tour Finals, but never lost him on outdoor hard. Like I think it's something like 5-0 or something on outdoor hard, and again, like got undone, I guess, by serve volleyer or someone who was willing to serve and volley and could do it well. I think it's not everyone can just serve and volley, and it's maybe when they win, but obviously pulled it off, and it was pretty good. And he now goes into the US Open probably thinking, well, if I don't face like a Tsitsipas or Kyrgios or a Nadal, I'll probably back myself to potentially blitz people, but most likely he's going to have to face someone if he wants to win the US Open. And there are some issues with return position and everything, etc. And hasn't served as well as I think we've seen him serve in the past as well. Like, what's your thoughts around how like he is form wise and his chances, etc. as well?
Yeah, you spelled it out. I mean, it's if you look at who he's lost to, you're like, oh, okay, he lost to Kyrgios and Tsitsipas. They're pretty good. Whereas if he'd lost to someone like so random, because the week before that he won in Los Cabos, so it's kind of like, well, he was on like a good streak, winning that tournament. And then he played Kyrgios, was just unlucky, and then he played Tsitsipas, who copied the plan of Kyrgios, which is very smart by Steph. I mean, you play a guy that many times on hard court and you only get the one victory, you're going to have to figure out something. And I think they studied that Kyrgios, and it's funny because Kyrgios actually did what everyone thought. Well, like everyone, it was like a theory. It's like, oh, you could do that against Medvedev. Let's see if it works. But no one really did it until Kyrgios came along and did the serve volley, and then Tsitsipas adopted it. So maybe there's something that others can work on. But again, you got to have a good serve and you got to have a pretty good volley to get it past Medvedev. He still had some crazy shots.
Yeah.
So I'm not too worried about Medvedev's form because of the players he's lost to. Like if he plays Kyrgios in the third round and he's going to play Tsitsipas in the semis or whatever, it's like, okay, that's a terrible draw and it's going to be tough. But I don't know. I backed him last year. At the end of last year, I thought, oh, he's going to go back to back. And I always do a prediction before the season, like 9 months before. But I still back Medvedev because I can't see anyone else. I know Alcaraz is a very popular pick, but again, he just lost to Norrie, who he hadn't lost to, and that was a bit of a shock. I know people want to go with the Kyrgios fairy tale, but I just don't know if Keegs is going to be able to do it again. Nadal hasn't played enough matches on hard court for me, so I'm worried about him. It's like, who else do you pick? I mean, Medvedev's the safest pick for me anyway, but I'm not too worried about his form going in. And I'm sure he wouldn't either. He'd probably look at those two guys and go, well, yeah, okay, I bet I can beat everyone else, but those two guys, it just is frustrating to have to play those guys so early. But we'll find out. I guess the draw will be huge. As long as Kyrgios and Tsitsipas are away, I mean, he should go to the second week at least.
Yeah. I mean, he won't get. I don't think he'll get Tsitsipas first week, and Kyrgios he could, I think, right, because Kyrgios is 24th seed, so potentially he could. But it's interesting because like people say, like you mentioned it, and I'm of the same thinking, but then I kind of think back to the Australian Open in regards to Nadal not having enough hardcourt matches, right? And you're like, well, but then he had like a massive layoff before the Australian Open and somehow won it. But I guess the difference between that then and now is that he managed to play that Melbourne Somerset like the week before on the courts. Like the opposition wasn't great, but it didn't matter because all he needed to do was get a feel for the balls, the courts, competitive matches, played back to back. And that really helped. And even though he'd had that massive layoff, I felt like that helped kind of at least warm him up a bit. Whereas in Cincinnati, like the worst possible thing could have happened, which is losing his first match to Djokovic, because it was like he missed Canada to play Cincinnati, which is like a better indicator because the court's playing more similarly nowadays to US Open. The balls are exactly the same as well. It's like he would have been thinking, damn, that was like a really big miss, right?
Yeah, well, that's it. I think the difference between like the Australian Open and now is that like he didn't play for 6 months, which is could be bad, but also he recharged his gas tank for 6 months, whereas Wimbledon wasn't that far. It was only like a month or two ago. So, and he was injured, 2 months, like 8 weeks ago. So, and he's
Yeah.
coming back from injury a lot quicker, and it's an injury that seems to be, he was pulled out of Canada with, thinking, well, I can't serve properly because of this, muscle tear. So you wonder if it is 100%. Whereas at the end of last year, he didn't play for 6 months or whatever, and he came back in Australia with 100% back to normal, back to fresh. He might be out of form, but he was coming in fresh. Might not be coming to the US Open as fresh. So that's where I'm like, will he be able to play 5-set matches against all these hardcore guys? 7 in a row. It's, what if Coric is around? We've seen that Coric has kind of come out of nowhere. I'm a little worried about Rafa just because of the physical, like the injury aspect. And feels like he's had so many injuries this year. He's pulled out of so many tournaments.
Yeah.
And coming back from injury, seems I'm a little worried for Rafa.
Do you think though? I guess given that, like I was just talking about how the courts are really quick, but I guess it's still slower than the Australian Open, right? And he played in the end, played really well at the Australian Open. And he's won the US Open 4 times. Has some like better memories there. Do you think it might be a case of like he just needs, if say the draw is kind to him, which I guess early on in the Australian Open it was, because it was like every round the people that would potentially be massive banana skins, they got upset and then he wasn't having to play them, right? Like Kokkinakis was playing really well the week before because he won in Adelaide, I think it was, right? It was Adelaide? Or Sydney? Where's he from?
Yeah.
It's Adelaide, right? Yeah, so he won in Adelaide, and then he goes into the Australian Open and you're like, oh, he might face Nadal in the second round, and then like he lost the first round, right? And then I think a couple of other players lost, and you think, okay, and it opened up. And then the second week, of course, like you can't avoid playing top players because that's normally the case. But I feel like at the US Open, if something similar happens, and it can, I guess, because he's second seed, as long as he doesn't get someone crazy like a John Isner in the first round, then you're kind of thinking, okay, it might be okay. And normally against like a John Isner, you'd be fine. But when you're a bit rusty and you're Nadal, and even though you've got the highest return win percentage of all time, it still doesn't matter. Like when you played so little matches, I think competitive matches anyway, on these courts. So I feel like he'll be okay. I don't know if he'll win it, but I can see him going like second week and like making the semis maybe, and then like maybe go from there for sure. You mentioned Alcaraz is like a massive favorite for a lot of people. Why do you think that's it? Why do you think that is? Because you mentioned obviously that he lost to Norrie. I guess that was a really tight one. Was it 2 tiebreakers, lost 6-4 in the third? And I was actually looking at his results recently, and in Montreal and in Cincinnati, the first 2 sets were tiebreakers. The losses that he had. So the first 2 sets were tiebreakers, and obviously one set apiece. And then he lost the third set like 6-3 or 6-4. I was like, it's really weird, like almost identical like losses. And it's almost as if like, is he struggling to break people? When he first broke onto the tour, I was like, he's a natural returner, but I'm now starting to think maybe he's not as natural returner as maybe I first thought. What are your thoughts on his form? Because he had like a massive like hot streak on the clay, but now he has had some good results. Like he's obviously beaten some good players still, but it just doesn't seem like there's that same, I guess, maybe hype around him, and rightly so, I guess. But he's still going to be number 3 seed, which is like really high. So his draw's going to be pretty good if he manages to go deep.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think it was almost as people were as quick to jump off as they were to jump on. It was very much like he came out of nowhere and was killing everyone, and then all of a sudden it's like he lost 2 matches in a row, and it was like, oh yeah, he's actually not that good. He lost to Zverev and Sinner, and you go, okay, well, they're pretty good. But a lot of people jumped off once he lost that Zverev match, which was kind of strange. And then I guess, well, again, he's probably dealt with that too, like, dealing with all this hype, and then all of a sudden he's getting all this, you're overrated, backlash that seems to always happen when someone's really good for a certain period and they don't do as well as they were doing. But yeah, like he played well here last year. This was like 12 months ago was when he broke out. He got to the quarterfinals and then had to retire because he was a little tired. But 12 months ago it was the tournament that made him a mainstream name, and then 2022 has been what it has. So I'm I think people get on getting behind Alcaraz, maybe not so much because of his recent form. Lost to Tommy Paul, lost to Norrie, two guys that maybe 3 months ago he wouldn't have lost to. But
yeah,
it's just, I guess, random champions happen at the US Open. It always seems that we've had Dominic Thiem win it in the COVID year. We had Medvedev win it. We've had Stan, Cilic, Del Potro. If you want to go way back, Murray, I think, won his first slam at the US, or maybe one of his slams at the US. It seems to have a bit of a random aspect to it. Without Djokovic around, you've only got Rafa as the guy who's sort of the US Open, when Federer not playing as well, US Open guy, the best US Open player in the draw, I guess. So he's a guy that I guess people will pick. It's hard because, he's probably got more expectation compared to last year. Last year, it was like this guy coming out of nowhere, winning all these matches, exciting 18-year-old baby Rafa. Now he's one of the favorites. Now it's like, okay, well, now you're expected to make it to the quarterfinals. We don't care. Like, nobody cares what your draw is. It's like you have to beat everybody else. You're number 3.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see how that works. And also, he's got to defend points. A lot of points to defend from the quarterfinals. So I'm interested to see how he does. And also his draw. If he plays Kyrgios in the 3rd round, which might happen, I guess, if 24.
Yeah, I think it can.
Could happen.
Yeah.
Or like you said, or a John Isner in the 1st round. John Isner in America is not fun to play in the 1st round. So, yeah, he'll be interesting to see. Another player that, Sinner's another player that people think might be able to win his first, being just a random sort of event.
Yeah.
And he's kind of been in form, I guess, the last few weeks, or at least he's been in better form than someone like an Alcaraz. But yeah, it's this for both the men and the women, because the players that we expect to do well are either not there or they're not in good form. It feels like it could be more random than ever this year, and it could be both the men and the women. Last year, it was always the women's event always seems to be random, but the men's event even more. Like, I can't, like, there's no obvious pick. But Alcaraz has got to be in the top 5, but that might not matter. So we'll see.
It's interesting because I did a player profile on Alcaraz because I've been doing it this week, and shorter videos on people that I think are contenders, right? And I think there's been a pattern with a lot of his losses this year, and it's been to people that majority of the time it's been to people that have these elite backhands, right? So in the backhand to backhand exchanges, and it's funny because this never really seemed to be a problem, and I guess it only really got highlighted against Zverev at Roland Garros and then against Sinner. And then it was like, oh, okay, interesting. And then against Musetti happened. And you're like, oh, okay. All these 3 players, right? Like, what they got in common? Well, they're not scared to take you on in the backhand to backhand. They also got probably arguably elite backhands as well. The top 10 backhands on tour. And Alcaraz's backhand was never seen as a weakness, but I feel like it's not maybe as strong as people expected. I feel like if he doesn't play anyone with an elite backhand, he's always going to be favorite. And I feel like even against those players, he might be, but I feel like he's always going to have issues until he sorts out maybe his backhand defense against those players. Like against Sinner, for example, at Wimbledon is a good example. Like, he was having to slice a lot when he didn't want to in those exchanges because it's a quicker court. Sinner can use angles on the backhand side. So he was dragging him out and he wasn't able to run around it and hit the forehand. And then with his backhand, it's it's pretty good. It's serviceable. It's not, as I said, it's not a massive weakness. But against those guys, they exploit any little kind of, I guess, anything they can that might be a potential disadvantage. Have you seen a similar thing? Are you of the same opinion that that's something that potentially could rear its head? I guess for him, it's a positive thing that, not positive, and I'm sure he's not cheering about it, but obviously Zverev's injured. So that's one player that he doesn't have to worry about. Who's again, he probably doesn't fancy going backhand to backhand with. Djokovic, most likely, he's not going to be able to play. Another player that you wouldn't want to go backhand to backhand with. Musetti's not particularly good on any surface that isn't that doesn't look like it's red. So at the moment, he's a clay court specialist, and and that kind of then leaves Sinner. But then you'd back, I guess, Alcaraz against Sinner on a hard court because Alcaraz's game is maybe a little bit more in tune to it, and Sinner again, he's still learning, and you probably slightly edge to it. So, but do you see it similarly that if he is to face someone if he was to face Djokovic is playing or a Sinner or someone like that actually he does tend to have those type of issues with them because of it.
Yeah, I can see that, but for me, it feels more like it's a confidence problem now, because he's gone from sort of, like I said, riding high. Then he lost that Zverev match, which I guess was an upset, kind of, because at the time, he'd just beaten Zverev easily, 3 weeks before, and then he lost to Sinner on the grass, which I guess was unexpected. The Musetti loss was totally random. He hadn't lost in a final, and then he lost to Sinner the next week in another final. So he lost back-to-back finals for the first time ever. And then he just, he had match points, lost to Paul. He said after that match that he had, he said that was the first time he's buckled under pressure. And then he lost to Norrie, a guy that he's beaten pretty convincingly every time. I think Norrie got a set off him once, but he lost for me, it just can't, maybe, a bit of the backhand as well, going backhand to backhand, but also I just think he's dealing with a lot of things that he hasn't had to yet. Because when you're riding high and you're beating, goats back to back, and you're winning everything you play, and everyone's talking about how you're so good, and this is what we've been missing, and this guy's the next guy, and then he does have these losses, and people start turning to someone else, turning their back on him and being like, you know what, maybe he's not the guy we thought he was, and he's dealing with a lot of things that he has to, losing finals and taking losses and and I think the big thing is being the favorite now. He went from being the underdog, he was beating everyone and scaring everyone, to now being the favorite where everyone wants to beat him. And that's what I saw when I watched him play Norrie the other day. It was like Norrie came out having lost to him 3 times in a row, not really being competitive. And he came out there, and Alcaraz was kind of like, oh, I'm the guy, I'm supposed to beat you. And Norrie was the underdog big time, and he shocked him. So I think it's more of just dealing with all those things, dealing with being the favorite and dealing with, taking losses, and in situations that he's never had to deal with, having match points against a guy he should have beaten relatively easily, and losing, and all these things. And, if he does play anyone, it might actually do him a favor if he plays someone who's supposed to beat him, like someone who's better than him. If he does play a Sinner, maybe it's better now, because he is I'm playing Sinner on clay and grass. Both surfaces totally opposite. You would think that, the hard courts are still more neutral, and Sinner's beaten you twice. So then Sinner's going to be the favorite now. That might help Alcaraz being the underdog again. Because I think that's another thing. During that, even when he won Miami, he still wasn't, he was maybe top 10, but he wasn't like the favorite. Now he's 4 in the world. So I'm interested to see if he does play against a couple of guys that other people are expecting him to lose to. That might just fire him up a little bit. So he might actually benefit from getting a bad draw, which is kind of weird to think. If he gets an easy draw, that might not be good. He might relish the challenge of playing against harder players. Maybe getting a rematch against Musetti in the first round will help him. Just to sort of, even though on hard courts you would think Alcaraz should beat Musetti, but just psychologically, to get through that Musetti match and get some revenge, play Sinner in the 3rd or 4th round or whatever it is, and then go on to play, I don't know, if Medvedev's the semifinals or whoever. It might just trick him into playing. And he's got one of the best coaches going around, and one of the most experienced players, one of the most experienced coaches in terms of playing, who made a US Open final. So he knows. So Juan Carlos Ferrero can tell him, oh yeah, I made the final back in 2003. I know how to deal with this court and deal with this crowd and deal with all this stuff. So I'm interested. I'm really interested to see how he does, because I think he has been struggling a lot and losing matches. And I've looked at my chat when he loses, and it's very like, he was overrated, and everyone was talking not that good. And you're like, well, no, he's didn't accidentally beat Rafa and Djokovic back to back. That wasn't an accident. So, but in terms of playing style, people are starting to figure him out as well. That's another thing when you start winning. Carrots have
people
found
out. People analyze the game a lot more, right? They've got a lot more tape.
There's more footage of you playing against different types. You're playing lefties. You're playing, baseliners. You're playing, servers. There's a lot more footage out there now to analyze how to, pick you apart.
Yeah, and people like me see people like me trying to analyze his game, and they're like, oh, Yeah. They listen to it and it's completely wrong advice. Yeah, exactly. No, but it's like everyone's going to analyze it, right? That's the thing. As soon as he kind of like broke on, it's like everyone's talking about his game and what's so great about him. So people, yeah, as you said, like there's just so much more to him. And then it's like, okay, well, everyone then starts to play you a few times as well. They get a feel of what you're bringing to the table. And I guess we saw a little bit like when he lost to Sinner the second time on the clay, like he was playing the drop shots, and it was like Sinner was like, "No, I know when you're going to play it." And he just got there, and I was like, "Nah, I'm too quick for you." It's like, whoa, it was just crazy to watch, right? He was like he knew what was going on. I know they're good friends as well, so they probably played a few times together as well. But it was crazy. So I'm hoping he does do pretty well. I don't see why he wouldn't be able to do well if given the neutral surface, the courts. I think the courts now at the US Open being slightly quicker probably is an advantage to him. I feel like the Australian Wimbledon's almost like too quick for him, and Roland Garros is like too slow. And I feel like the US Open is like perfect. It's like kind of in between. It's like he's got enough time on the ground strokes, but it's also not super slow that it kind of then hampers his offensive game. So I feel like it's probably. I feel like this is the ideal like Grand Slam for him this year. That is anyway. So we'll see. Like I guess it's the one that he made the quarterfinals at last year, broke through. So I'm interested to see how he does. But we'll see. In terms of like, so Tsitsipas is number 4, right? He's ranked number 4, and he just beat Medvedev. He's suddenly come into a little bit of form. Like, what are your thoughts on his chances? Because a lot of people are thinking, well, he might be able to do something here and go far. Are you of the same thinking, or is it, it's probably not? He's still his best chances at the French Open, and actually on a hard court, you still back, an Alcaraz, an Nadal, and Medvedev against him, and even maybe someone like a Felix against him.
Yeah, I've already been burnt by Tsitsipas so many times, picking him for tournaments and picking him to do well, and he doesn't do well. He did beat Medvedev, and it was great. It was a great win. I think the biggest change I've seen since the French, because he lost, he got upset at the French, is having Mark Philippoussis, which I think it's turned him into more of an aggressive player. And he showed that on the grass when he won a tournament and did well at Wimbledon, won some matches at Wimbledon for the first time in a few years. And then even on the hard courts, like watching him play Medvedev and playing those kind of, he never really had a good slice, and his volleys were okay, but his serve was, it feels like he was serving more, like serving bigger and hitting it flatter rather than just trying to get the serve in and try and rally against a guy like Medvedev who was feeling like he was being a more aggressive player, and that's what Philippoussis would have brought in. So Philippoussis made a final of the US Open, so he knows what to do there as well. It's so hard to pick Tsitsipas for anything at the moment. I guess I've got to compare him to the others, that are below him. Like, can he beat like Felix? Can he beat
Kyrgios?
Those guys below him? Yeah, I mean, Ruud is there. Rublev has kind of fallen off a little bit.
Yeah.
He should beat all those guys. But
what about Kyrgios? Right, lost to Kyrgios.
Yeah,
Could he beat Kyrgios? I don't know.
I think it's gonna be tough because I guess Felix has. I don't know if Felix is going to do that well because he has semi-final points to defend.
Yeah,
and I think he's a very psychological player. That if he gets things, he's been. I mean, how many finals did he have to play before he won one? And I think having those extra points on his back is going to help. Is not going to help him. So yeah, Tsitsipas is a weird one. Could he? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he won it. But
oh, really? Okay.
I mean, it would be such a this again. Like I said, this US Open just feels so open and so random that if he won it, it would be like, oh yeah, that seems to be what happens here. Like okay. He'd have to get a good draw though. I mean, he wouldn't if he played like there's. I mean, he lost a set against Isner, kind of out of nowhere. When I was watching that one, it was a bit strange to see him just kind of drop the second when he was kind of cruising to a straight sets tiebreak win or something. But yeah, I don't really have much expectation on him, but I guess he could go all the way. He's the guy that I guess no one's talking about because he's hasn't done as well as the others. Like Rafa's done what he's done. Medvedev's the defending champ. Alcaraz is the next. Is what people want to see. They want to see him getting slammed really young. And Tsitsipas kind of that forgotten guy after that.
Yeah.
That French Open final last year. So that might help him. It would depend on his draw. I think the draw is going to be so important this year.
Yeah, for
it's
sure.
Going to depend who, with those, especially those sort of who gets to play. Let me just find who. I don't know whoever's number from 16 to 8. Like those guys there's going to be a bunch of like Hurkacz and Rublev and who is going to play them in the third or fourth round potentially. That's going to be where it's at. If you can get a nice fourth round matchup, and then the quarterfinals maybe get a little tougher, then you're okay. But I think it's going to be who's going to play like Hurkacz or
Berrettini.
Berrettini's in Berrettini's in there.
Cilic, Sinner.
Cilic, exactly. All those
Fritz,
guys.
Yeah.
If you can avoid one of those guys, Fritz versus Nadal fourth round. If that happens, what's that going to look like? But so you have Tsitsipas, and then the first rounds. Obviously, we've seen over the last 2 weeks, mainly more so in Canada, that everybody lost in the first, second rounds. All the seeds lost. So are we going to see one of those tournaments where, day 3 or 4, everyone's gone? All the seeds are gone, and we're just looking at 1 or 2, top 10 seeds left. I don't know. It's really going to be important to draw. And I think Murray's unseeded, so it's like, where's he going to fall?
Yeah.
Murray pushed Tsitsipas last year at the US.
Yeah.
I think 12 months ago, Murray is Murray's way better now than he was 12 months ago.
Yeah, agreed.
Is he going to play against Tsitsipas? It's going to be that's going to be really interesting. So I think the draw is going to be more important than anything for all these guys.
Yeah, I agree. The draw is going to be crucial, isn't it? And Tsitsipas is an interesting one because he hasn't had good results at the US Open. I don't think he's ever made the 4th round at the US Open. So that's like his worst slam out of all of them, to be fair, in terms of results-wise. So he'll be looking to I guess, stop the rot, I guess, because, Australian Open is a quicker hardcourt, and he's made the semi-finals 2 years in a row. So you'd expect him then to do something at the US Open when it's slightly slower. So he's got more time on his forehand. On his backhand even. And his returning does seem to have improved a little bit, like better block returns. We saw against Medvedev. Actually, saying, you know what, I'm not going to take wild swings at the ball on the backhand for return. It's not working. I'll shank it half the time. So let me just block it back into play, get it deep into court and just get it to neutral. And then I can hurt people with my forehand. So I think, a little bit more intelligent play. Against Coric, it was a little bit concerning because there were definitely points where he just wasn't going for the ball. I don't know if you saw that when you were watching
the second set was horrendous.
It was like Coric was going down the line with the forehand and backhand, and he wasn't hitting his spot, and it was almost middle of the court, and he kind of just didn't move. And I was like, okay, he's basically mentally gone. I'm hoping, to be fair, I've never seen it from him before, so I'm hoping that was just maybe his dad was chatting to him a lot, and he was almost rebelling against him, and he just needs to get out of the system, and he's just annoyed because Coric was playing really well. So I'm hoping that it's just a one-off, and then he kind of brings his best tennis to the US Open, because that was really bizarre. What do you think of Coric, by the way? Obviously, incredible win, and great to see him back. He suddenly started serving massive. I don't think I've ever seen him serve like that, which is weird considering that he had a shoulder injury, but serving really big. Of course, the backhand is incredible. It's elite. The forehand it can be inconsistent, but it was firing. Clearly has a great mental game. Saved a lot of break points against Tsitsipas in that final multiple times. He's now completely catapulted himself into the seedings from I think it's 160 or something to 26 now. Can he go on a little bit of a run? Is he one of the dark horses?
He's going to be everyone's dark horse. I think that's going to be obvious because, is he a dark horse? I don't know. He won Cincinnati. Does that count him as an under the radar player? He's not. Maybe if he lost in the final, people would have said that. I don't know. Does he qualify as a dark horse now, or is he too well known? Is everyone going to pick him? So I mean, yeah, that was ridiculous. Like, I think I watched probably about. I watched him play Rafa, a little bit of Felix, and then of course the last two matches, Norrie and he destroyed Norrie, and then he beat Steph in the final. But his serving was crazy. And when he played Felix, FAA it wasn't terrible, but he just, like you said, served so well. He was serving so big. And I think the last time I would have watched, well, he did play Tsitsipas a couple of years ago at the US in that one of the epic matches.
The 1 in 5, yeah.
And saving match points and all that stuff. I don't remember watching him there, but I did sort of, when he got to that Shanghai final, that was sort of when Tennis Talk YouTube channel started. So I saw him take that rise, and he beat Federer or someone along the way, and he got to the final. But he wasn't playing like that I can remember 4 years ago. Yeah. I don't think he was playing that good.
Big, yeah.
And I guess just with injury and not being around, and then he is one of the original next gen guys. I think that's what people forget, is that he was with Zverev and Medvedev. Well, he was even more well known than Medvedev because he was beating Federer at 18 when he was 18, and he was on the grass and all that stuff. So he was sort of that guy. He was supposed to be in the top 10 by now. He was supposed to be with Zverev and in the finals of slams and semifinals and a serious contender, but injuries have kept him away. So maybe it's Choric's time now to get to the semis and to do what he was supposed to do, 4 years ago before injury cut him down. I would love to see that because I think he's great. I mean, he brings such a good energy. He's so aggressive. He looks like a shorter player. He looks like he's about 5'11", 6 foot, but he's 6'2", 6'3", and he's got a big serve. So he's not a short guy, but he moves like a shorter guy. He's got massive ground strokes, and he plays with no fear. And he's probably going to do the same until he gets into that closer to the top 10. He's probably going to play fearless. I'd love to see him play Alcaraz. That's the match that I want to see because you've got the guy that I guess was people were saying that they called him Baby Djokovic. I don't remember people calling Coric Baby Djokovic, but he definitely has a lot of Djokovic.
Tendencies. Yeah,
he can play like Djokovic. Some of his
backhand especially. Yeah.
So I'd love to see him play Alcaraz early as a real test. I mean, that could be probably a third round, Alcaraz Coric. That would be a really interesting match. And it'd be great for Alcaraz as well. I mean, a real good test super early to play someone who's in form and when you're maybe lacking a bit of form. I mean, if dark horses are players outside the top 20, then he's the obvious one. He is the dark horse. But I wouldn't be surprised if he makes the quarters or further because of what he's already done. Best of 5. Does he stay healthy? I mean, was it a 1 week thing like Carreño Busta? He had a great week in Canada. And he disappeared last week. So I don't know. It's I'm really excited for Coric. So I'm glad he's back because I think he kind of throws another dimension into the mix. And another one of these next gen guys. He's not super old. He's like 24, 25. And it would be great to see him do well. It'd be such a redemption if winning in Cincy and then going to like a semi-final. Yeah. Even if he lost, to Medvedev or someone, it's like, well, it'd be cool to have him back as well. Because what does that look like with him in the mix, competing for Grand Slams against Medvedev and Tsitsipas and Zverev and all these guys who have had chances while he's been away? And it's like, I think it would, throw. And he's probably got a bit of a chip on his shoulder trying to get, while he's been in surgery, all these guys have been trying to win slams, and he's like, well, you had your chance. Now I'm going to come back and take it. That'd be really fun to watch because it was really fun watching him last week.
Yeah, it was. I can see definitely the Djokovic tendencies with the backhand for sure. Like just the way he hits it. But yeah, the serve, like as you said, it just hasn't.
Yeah.
Against Felix, I think it was 97% of first serve points won. Like ridiculous.
Yeah, he lost 1 point.
That's absolutely insane over 2 sets. And like just served so big. I think he was averaging like 125 miles per hour for the week. Like that's just like ridiculous. That's just absolutely ridiculous. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing him at the US Open, and I guess he's got no points to defend unless I'm mistaken. So if that's the case, then like he could easily catapult himself even further towards the top 10, right? With a good little run. So it'll be interesting to see how he does. Before we move on to the women's, who's your predicted winner and dark horse? I mean, the winner is tough because there's no draw out, but if you had to pick someone, like who would it be? And then in terms of dark horse, like, yeah, I guess as you said, a lot of people will pick Coric, but even just someone that you think might perform better than people were expecting as well.
Yeah, I'm going to go Medvedev just because I trust him. I trust his game. He's proven he plays well at the US Open. He's made, I think, like the semifinals or better the last 3 years. So he's got the consistency. I would pick Rafa, but I just don't know if his body's going to be able to do it. So I'm going to go with Medvedev, and I picked him at the end of last year, and I'll stick with that. And then Coric is the dark horse. I mean, I don't want to. I mean, I want to pick him, but I don't want to seem obvious. It's like, oh yeah, of course, everyone's going to pick him. So I mean, you can pick anyone as the dark horse. I picked Sinner's probably the one that, if he gets a good draw, could get to a semi-final, would go further. So maybe Yannick Sinner. I know a lot of people have also said him, but yeah, it's funny because I said Berrettini before the US Open series started, and then he lost like first round. I'm like, oh well, that's out the window. I don't trust him anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll go with Medvedev and Sinner. I think Medvedev is the favorite. Sinner is the dark horse.
Yeah,
because I don't think he's being spoken about as much as Coric would be.
No, he hasn't been. He hasn't been. But yeah, he's definitely dangerous. And yeah, the Berrettini one's so interesting because I saw him like live at Queens on the grass, and I was like, he's looking really good, like moving really well. Like I feel like his movements like a lot better, like the way he's moving around the court. He's still serving massive forehand, like hammer forehand, slicing nicely. And then obviously couldn't play Wimbledon. I felt that was a massive, massive blow because obviously he tested positive. That was like crazy. And then comes into the hard court swing, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, we're going to see him play well. And then just like first round loss. It's like, oh my god. And I know they were like the second one against TFO was like really, really close, but
yeah,
it was just like, oh man, like there's absolutely zero like practice under your belt because of it. It's just crazy. So he's going to come into it completely cold. So it's going to be really difficult to see him go really deep. But who knows? Like he made quarterfinals last year, lost to Djokovic in 4 sets.
Where
Djokovic just kept on
2 years before or something.
Yeah. So his results are pretty good right on there, and that was the year obviously last year where Djokovic was just losing the first set to everyone, just gifting it, and then was like beating them, which was like crazy. Yep. Well, the women's side then, I mean, the women's side is absolute carnage. I mean, I'm looking at the seedings, right, Cam? I don't know what you think, but like we've got Kontaveit at 2, Sakari at 3, Badosa at 4, and I don't remember the last time these guys have gone deep in a tournament. That might be sounding harsh, but these guys are really talented, but the rankings are messed up. Like Jaber's at 5, and I'm like, Jaber, fine. Like she's obviously made the Wimbledon final, but then that didn't even take into account ranking points, but she's had some good wins in the clay court swing and grass court swing. But even like recently, she's been in poor form as well. And then you kind of like you go down to Sabalenka's been playing relatively well recently. Halep played really well, won Montreal, or Toronto, sorry, even. And obviously had to pull out of Cincinnati. Baguda's been really consistent. And then Swiatek's at the top, but it's like Swiatek hasn't been playing well either. It's like, so I was doing my power rankings, and I was like, I have absolutely like zero idea. Like I'm trying to understand how does this work, but it's just I feel like it's so random. I guess we can start with Swiatek first. I mean, what do you think her chances are? I mean, is she the favorite? Should she be the favorite? I mean, and is it alarming if someone's a Swiatek fan to see like the way she's played? I guess since the Wimbledon loss, there's clearly been a dip. I mean, it's always going to happen. Like you can't just win matches. What was it, 37 matches in a row? Like there's always going to be a come down at some point. I think it's more a case of like it's been relatively substantial, right? The come down. Like obviously now going into this, a lot of people are thinking she might be a favorite but not by much. I mean, what are your thoughts on her? I guess first.
Yeah, well, she's lost half of her matches in the last 8 matches, right? So 4 and 4 since that the French Open, or since Wimbledon. It's tough. I mean, watching her the last 2 weeks in her losses, lost to Keys and Haddad Maia. Both of those, Haddad Maia was on a really windy day, so I guess the conditions maybe got her in the end. But then against Keys, she just didn't look good. She just looked very nervous and wasn't really going for anything. And Keys just blew her off the court, and Keys almost gave it back to her, but she got the win in the end. But yeah, I don't think Swiatek's played well at the US either. I think she made maybe a 4th round last year, but I don't think it's been any better. Yeah, and she is the favorite, but I don't. I'm the same as you. I'm looking for a name to like. Halep is probably in the betting, I think Halep's second favorite and Swiatek's first because she's the number one. But yeah, I'm going down the list of players that I'm like, I can't think of anybody. Like Raducanu's the defending champ. Is she going to do it again? Unlikely. All the players like Kazatkina played well in the first week and then lost a couple of early rounds, and then in the next 2 weeks, Goff's injured. Fernandez, hasn't done much lately. As a defending finalist, Sakari made the semis last year. Badosa and Kontaveit have all lost. Jabeur lost. Sabalenka played well last week.
Made the semis last year as well in the US, I guess.
Made the semi. Yeah, that's true. But is she going to double fault in the first round? Is she going
to double fault?
Pegula.
Cam, that's a silly question. She's definitely going to double fault. It's just a question of how many times.
Yeah, is it going to be over under 20? And then Pegula is probably going to make the quarters because she does that every time, which is why she's in the top 10. But is she going to win? Probably not. It's there's no even Raducanu, Raducanu being the Wimbledon champion, people are like, oh, she can win the US. It's like, well, she hasn't done. She lost, I think, the Keys last week, and then I can't remember who she lost the week before. But there's just no
one.
Yeah. Maybe Halep. But yeah, Swiatek. I mean, I can't see how she's going to go unless until we get the draw. I think the draw again.
Yeah.
Once we get the draw, then we'll see. Because if Swiatek could get third round against Ostapenko, which is always a nightmare, or first round Serena, I don't even know what that looks like. It's like, I think but then again, we've seen the last few weeks the draw doesn't really matter. And the thing with Swiatek I've seen is that she went on this crazy streak, and everyone, players that played her and people that were watching her, like, when is this going to end, or who's going to break this? And over the last sort of 8 weeks or about 2 months since that streak was broken, Garcia got her on the clay, which was the only clay court loss she's had, and then she's lost the last 2 weeks on the hard courts. I think the aura has gone. Like, the aura of invincibility is gone. And now it's like, oh, okay, she's lost 4 matches to 4, relatively random players. Cornet was not expected at all. Garcia in front of the home crowd in Poland was unexpected. Haddad Maia wasn't expected. Keys probably wasn't because she got demolished by Swiatek earlier in the year. So
yeah,
I feel like no one's afraid of her anymore. She's lost that scariness.
Yeah, invincibility. Agreed.
Yeah, but then again, she could just turn it up. I mean, she did that. She lost, I think, in Dubai before the streak started. She lost to Ostapenko, and it was like, she played okay. She got to the Australian Open semis playing okay. And then, was kind of on and off throughout the first part of the year. And then once Doha hit, she just couldn't be beat, and then kept going. So maybe she can turn it up, but it depends who she plays in the first rounds. It depends who she has in the third round. It depends. It just, I mean, that's it. She's definitely lacking confidence. You can tell that by the way she's not sort of going, like, it's kind of similar to Alcaraz, seems to be like just holding back a little bit and not hitting those winners that she was against everybody else back in, on the clay. So yeah, we'll see. But she doesn't have any form, so it's hard to pick her and hard to see how far she goes.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's so weird because, like, we were going into Wimbledon and it was like she's played so well. She's now like Barty, obviously retired, and it's like, oh, she's now taken that mantle, and now it's like, okay, she won the French Open, but then she's dropped back down, and it's like, you know what? It's just chaos again. It's just chaos again. It's like absolute chaos, and I love it because it's going to be so interesting. But I tell you what, if you're a betting person, you just don't want to bet on the WTA because you have absolutely zero idea what's going to go on with it.
No.
It's crazy, and already she's kind of come out and talked about the balls, obviously, because they're normal, they play with different balls, they're normal duty compared to heavy duty, so obviously it flies a bit more, and she's like, I don't like the balls, and I'm just like, okay, that's not a good sign. Like straight away, kind of talking about that. So I was like, okay, we'll see. I guess we can kind of group together like Kontaveit, Sakari, and Badosa. Like these are players that played really well last year, and this year it's just been flat. I don't know, like what you think, but they've had a couple of like decent performances, but there's not really been much of note. I mean, what's your view on those three? I mean, then ranked number 2 to 4, so they should, in theory, be contenders. But what's your thoughts?
Yeah, they all played really well. Or a couple of Sakari and Kontaveit played very well at the start of the year. I think they played each other in a final of a big event in like February or something, and they played. And I think Sakari did well in America on the hard courts, and it's. And I don't remember Badosa really having a good. I mean, she played well, I guess, at the very start of the year, before the Australian Open.
Yeah.
So that's where she's. I guess they're all hanging on to those points at the WTA final. That's probably why they're still sort of that high up. Jabeur, I know she's just below them. She should be number 2 because of Wimbledon points, but that's, maybe that would make more sense if the rankings were like that.
Yeah.
And we don't know. Raducanu is way further down the list than she should be. It's a strange top 4. And Swiatek's not strange, but the other three, it's like, I can't remember when they played well. I don't remember them playing well on the clay.
No, they didn't.
Much. I don't remember Kontaveit playing well for a long time.
For a long time, yeah.
It's like, how does she? But then I remember this time last year, after the US Open, she went on that run. So she's got a lot of points coming up after this. So this might be the only last time we see her this high for a while. But Sakari's got. She's got a lot of points to defend this tournament. I don't know what Badosa's going to do. Like, those three are so random, but. The thing is, they've got that number next to their name. So most of the people that don't watch tennis as much as we all do are going to be like, oh, she's number 2, she's number 3, she's number 4. They're the 4 favorites.
Yeah.
Because that's just what the casual fans are going to watch and see. But they're not. They're not the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th favorites. But they're going to have the expectation of that by the crowds and everything. Yeah. So let's see. I mean, Kontaveit's due for a good slam run. She hasn't had. I don't think she's done anything at a slam for ages. No. Maybe now, but Sakari made the semis last year, but she hasn't played great lately. Badosa, I have no idea what they're going to do. They could all lose on the first day. They could all lose first round. I wouldn't be surprised. They could all get to the semis, and I wouldn't. That would be more of a shock. But
agreed. Yeah, I agree.
It's like, I guess they're all trying to get to the second week as a minimum, but. Yeah, I wouldn't be backing any of them to do much based on recent form. I have no confidence in them at all.
I agreed. Yeah, I'm the same. I think it's just really random. So we'll see. I'm hoping they do come into some good form because they're clearly good players. I mean, I think all 3 of them are very exciting to watch as well. They're all pretty aggressive in their game style. Or Sakari is very like energetic, like energizer bunny, I like to call her. She's just absolute non-stop, like just incredible energy on court. And Badosa is like really exciting to watch as well when she's on. So it's just like, come on, like I just want to see everyone playing their best tennis, and then let's see who's the best. But I feel like with the women's side, like sometimes there's so many people that are hot, and then there's a lot of people that are so cold, and it's like. It just doesn't match up nicely at times because people just get blitzed and like the first round, like you're saying. So we'll see. I'm hoping they do something, but it's just no guarantees. Ons Jabeur, you said right, should be number 2. She's obviously had a really good year, and then last couple of weeks has looked a little bit adverse, I would say. Like, she's not looked great. I would say potentially hard courts is her worst surface, but that's not to say that she can't play well on them. What do you think her chances are? I mean, is she expected? Do you expect her to go far? Do you expect her to put together a run? I guess after making the Wimbledon final, she's obviously now got experience of going deep in a slam. I guess she's also got the mental scarring of losing a Grand Slam final though as well. What do you think her chances are?
Yeah, I mean, better than the other three, but I mean, I don't expect her to. I think she is struggling with what Medvedev and Tsitsipas have struggled with, and that's being like winning, being up in a final of a slam, and then losing. Because I think a lot of people don't give Medvedev the benefit of the doubt when he was up 2-0 and he lost, and then he went and he just kept on losing after that, and he's only won one title this year, and he's the number one, and all of that. I think Jaber's struggling a little bit with that too. Like, she was the favorite to win that final, because Raducanu came out of nowhere and no one was expecting us to, but we kind of expected Jaber, if not Swiatek, to get to the final. And I think she pulled out with injury. If was it in Canada? She lost last week. Saved match points in her first match, then lost the second match. Again, I think she's struggling with that being that, the one to beat now, as I think most of that top five are. But I don't expect much. I don't think. I guess the benefit for those four players that we talked about, they're not going to be spoken about as like the favorites by most people. No one's thinking Zachary is going to win, or Jaber's probably not going to win now, even though she got to the final of Wimbledon. The people that everyone's talking about, are the players that are just below. And obviously everyone's going to talk about Serena in the first couple of days anyway. So the spotlight's going to be off most players for the first couple of days, unless Serena keeps going, and then everyone's going to be ignoring everybody else except for Serena. So that might benefit a few players, but I don't expect much, which might be a good thing for her, because that means she can go about her business in peace, and no one's going to. She's number 5. Number 5 usually gets a little bit, I guess, overlooked because it's the top 4, and top 4 make the semis, the way the draw works. So she might benefit from being number 5, just kind of flying under the radar. She won't get a main court probably until she plays someone bigger, unless she plays an American. But yeah, maybe that'll help her. But I don't see her as a contender.
Yeah,
there's more contenders below her for sure.
yeah. Well, let's try and get to those then. I mean, Halep, you mentioned, who's obviously just won in Canada, pulled out of Cincinnati because she was, I think, niggled or injured. I mean, are you pretty high on her then going into the US Open? She's never won it, but she's obviously a Grand Slam champion. She's got experience. Is that is the Patrick Mouratoglou effect going to play a part in her victory in the US Open?
I think she's the best. She's the not. I mean, I don't think she's exactly the favorite. She's very close to Swiatek though, but she's the one who you can trust. At the moment as well, like, she's got recent form. She's a Grand Slam champion. She's been there before. All that stuff. So she's the most reliable pick, I think, at the moment. Sabalenka just above her. Maybe Sabalenka just getting into form at the right time. But I think Halep is the most reliable pick, because we know that she can. I mean, in her games, she's shown that over the last few weeks that she, even last week when she did pull out with an injury. I think it was more just to kind of get ready for the US and not have to push herself twice in 2 weeks, which is totally fair. I think last year she came back to the US Open as like a comeback from a long injury, and then she got to she did okay. I think she made maybe a 3rd or 4th round, not expecting anything. So I think now, I mean, out of all and she'll probably think this too, is all the players that are playing this event, she could beat to win it. Like, even Swiatek, if she has to play Swiatek, she'll probably feel pretty good about it. I'm sure she doesn't look at anybody in that top 10 as like a serious threat. So yeah, again, that's why I'm thinking she is if I had to pick one person, she'd be the one I'd be backing, just because I trust her She's got the experience. She's been there before. She hasn't won in at the US Open, but she's made the Australian Open final. She's won slams. It's just she feels the safest pick.
Yeah,
Trust her. Like I put her up against any of those players. Maybe Swiatek being like if by the time that she plays Swiatek, maybe she's got some form. But I put Halep up against any of them to win, and she'll beat any of them. So that's why I'm like more likely to pick Halep than pretty much everybody else.
Yeah, no, agreed. And I guess the American hopefuls are Pegula and Goff, right? So Pegula, as you said, like she is almost like a safe bet to make the quarters. She's been so consistent the whole year.
Yeah.
But doesn't quite seem to be able to like push past quarters, semis, and kind of really make that next step. And then for Coco, I think you said Goff has got a little bit of a niggle as well. But she's obviously a lot of people always pretty high on her. I know a lot of people have made predictions for her to win slams in the past, and she's only 18 years of age. People forget, but she's got the game right. She's got the game to trouble anyone when she's playing well. What's your thoughts on the American contingent? I mean, can they? And I guess, well, I'm saying American contingent without including, I guess, Daniel Collins and Madison Keys. We'll touch upon those two in a second. But I guess these two are the ones really kind of, being put forward to fly the flag. I mean, Pegula and Goff, I mean, can they do much of the US Open?
Man, it's tough because Pegula is. She's probably going to make the quarters. I mean, she's so consistent, but she just doesn't go on to win the whole thing. That's like with I mean, she made the final in Madrid, lost to Jabeur. She made she constantly makes semifinals or finals or quarterfinals. So you can bet that she's going to make the second week.
Yeah,
based on that. Goff coming in with an injury. I'm worried about that. I mean, she rolled her ankle. 2 weeks, is that enough? I mean, we saw Zverev do the same thing and he still isn't back. So, I mean, it's obviously not as bad, but a little worried about her. Collins, I don't remember the last time I saw her play. And Keys played really well last week, but I feel like she's a better player when she's not expected to play well. So, like now she's kind of like, oh, she's like, I'm sure a lot of people are going to look at her and, like I said, go through Pegula and go, oh yeah, she might not win it. She's probably going to make the semis or quarters, and then Goff's injured and Collins and like, oh, Madison Keys, oh yeah, she played well recently. Yeah, she probably out of all the Americans, she'll be the best, and that might be the worst thing. People actually noticing her. I mean, you've still got Anisimova, who's kind of flown under the radar yet again because she's the fifth American out of the bunch.
She's a danger, though, isn't she? She's a massive danger in this movie.
Yeah. Anyone. She. I mean, if she made the semis, I don't think any of us would be surprised.
No.
But it's just that's what I'm finding with this. The entire list is like, besides Halep, is like I'm looking at everyone going, yeah, but what about this? Or like, she hasn't done this before, or she hasn't proven this, or she's injured, or she's not in form, or it just seems like every player I look at, I'm like, there's no one that I don't know. I mean, Garcia is looking good in the middle there, but if she gets a bad draw, I mean, what happens then? What if she plays Halep? So I mean, the Americans, they're going to get put on center court. Is that going to be good or bad? I mean, that's another thing. Goff being on center court, obviously, it's gonna be the first few nights. She'll be the night match, I'm sure, and the expectation through the roof. But yeah, how injured is she? I mean, she rolled the ankle pretty badly. It looked like. So yeah, I don't know what to expect from them. I reckon the American men will do better. Guys like Fritz and some of the lower ranked American guys. I think they might do a bit better, because they're a little bit less likely, they're under the radar, whereas the American ladies, especially with Serena she'll get a lot of press, obviously, in the first few days. I'm not as confident with them, and I'm not sure like if Goff wasn't injured, I would be like, yeah, Goff could do some crazy things, but with that injury, that scares me.
You mentioned Caroline Garcia, like she's being in some great form, right? Won the won 2 tournaments in the last few weeks and won Cincinnati in like great form. I mean, a lot of people are really high on her, and I guess like we were saying about Troich being the dark horse, I'm sure a lot of people will put her as a dark horse as well. But what do you think? I mean, can she take her form into the US Open? Can she do something? People are even backing her to win it. I mean, which is pretty like crazy. But I mean, how far can she actually go?
I mean, she's number 17, so she's not. I mean, she's in great form, but she's not in the top 10, so she's not expected. I think if she was top 10 after those last few weeks, she would have been like, oh, well, her and Halep are the favorites and Swiatek, but she's not. She's still out far enough away that she's not, whereas Coric is kind of a little bit too far away. If he was maybe in the top 20, it would have been like he would have been maybe more of a serious threat. And, obviously being seeded in that top, if you're seeded, I mean, she's unlucky that she's not seeded in the top 16 because, she could have avoided playing, I guess, Halep or Swiatek too early. She can probably play them maybe third round earliest, which might not be great. But yeah, I mean, it just depends on how she feels, I guess, because she's played very well since. I think has to have the best record since before Wimbledon. I think I heard on Tennis Channel it was some ridiculous record like 29-6 or something, or some ridiculous thing. She beat Swiatek in Poland. The only clay court loss for Swiatek. She beat Raducanu at Wimbledon. She's won Cincy. She lost to Cornet badly in Toronto, but nobody remembers that because it was first round loss. But it's like, well, yeah, okay, she lost one match, but everything else, like she's been, three different surfaces in that run, 3 different titles and 3 different surfaces. I mean, she is, and she looks like she's kind of playing like Chori. She's got that massive serve. She's super aggressive, coming to the net a lot. I mean, she won the French Open doubles, so she's obviously got that game. But I think the thing that I'm worried about her is she going to have enough gas in the tank? Because she does sometimes come out with, her thighs wrapped up, the legs kind of go sometimes. So I'm a little worried about that. But I mean, yeah, if she can avoid playing against those names that I mentioned, and she gets, she seems to like to play against America, like against the locals in front of their crowd. So maybe if she gets a Pegula or a Goff in the first week, or one of those players, maybe she'll like that and get through. But yeah, I mean, I think she's played so much. That's the only worry I have for her. But she's been so good. It's just like, well, and she's played so well. Like the way she's played has been so scary for everybody. It's kind of like how Swiatek was playing, that kind of aggressive, you can tell she's got confidence. She's not holding back. She's nailing everything. She's hitting winners all over the place. She's returning from the service line on the second serve. Like some of the returns I was watching last week were ridiculous. Like she was standing inside, like a meter inside the baseline on, sometimes on first serve. She was feeling that good. It was super scary for everybody else. So yeah, I don't know what. I mean, again, the draw is going to be the thing, but she could definitely go on a run. I don't think she's played well there in America, in the US Open before. She had some big wins, but I don't know how far she's gotten. I think maybe a third round, I think was her best. So that could be a factor because sometimes if you haven't played well at an event, it does play. You go there thinking, oh, I've never done well here. Maybe this year, maybe I won't be able to play well here. But I mean, she was looking real scary last week and has been the most informed player in the last 2-3 months. So yeah, she's definitely going to have a lot of more eyes on her now though than probably before Cincy, when she was relatively hiding under the radar, even though she had some big wins.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I think, can she, does she have the stamina, I guess, to get through the US Open, the first few rounds, and also depends on the draw as well. Who does she get? How's she feeling, in terms of like being on as well. I guess the other thing is she's not going to be on the show. She might not be on like the main 2 or 3 show courts, right? So how's she going to play on the outside courts after being, the main person for the last week or so? And then I guess it's going to be a little bit of a come down, I guess, coming down and then playing on an outside court, for example. I don't know how she's going to deal with that. She seems like she's pretty level-headed. Shouldn't really affect her, but never know. I guess it's a pretty interesting. We can start off with some of the people who are maybe have played pretty well in recent years and at the US Open, but maybe not particularly going to be contenders. I mean, well, who knows? Raducanu is one, I guess, one last year. And then obviously in that ridiculous run, then Cincinnati looked good against Serena and Azarenka, although Serena is a shadow of herself, I think, when she played her. Azarenka, like, I was more impressed with that win because Azarenka's been playing pretty well in this part of the year each year. Like, she's just hard court, get to the hard court. It's almost like Azarenka just completely forget about Wimbledon, Roland Garros, and the grass and the clay, and then but hard courts either side. She normally plays really well. That was a really good win, I thought, over her. And clearly, likes playing at the US Open. I think the balls and the conditions. What are your thoughts on her? I mean, can she make a second week? Can she make a quarterfinal? Can she somehow do it again? I mean, is that going to be crazy? I mean, what's your thoughts?
Raducanu said something very interesting like a month ago, and I think she was sort of like she was kind of resigning the fact that she was going to drop down the rankings and the US Open points, she was not going to replicate it, and she wasn't going to she kind of gave off that vibe by saying like I'm ready to restart, rebuild, go back and start from zero, start from scratch after the US Open. And that's I'm a little bit worried about that. If it's like she's kind of not given up, but kind of been like, you know what?
Reserved, yeah.
I'm not going to win. I'm not going to win it again. I'm probably going to drop down. So I'm ready to rebuild. And I think having Tursunov for that to get back into the top again down the track, maybe sooner than most think, that'd be a good thing. But I think for me, she's been, as soon as she won the US Open, nobody knew what her best was and what her best form was and what she looked like outside of that tournament. And then we found over the last 12 months, oh, okay, that US Open last year, that was the best she can play. And she played a little bit like that against Azarenka, as you said, and against Serena, she played like that, but Serena couldn't get half the shots back because Raducanu was just pushing her around.
Yeah.
But then when she played Pegula, that was when it was kind of like, oh, okay, this is what she looks like when she plays against a fellow top 10 player. So I mean, it would be really, really disappointing if she lost in the first two rounds. I think that'd be a massive upset, and I think that'd be really such a shame unless she played against a crazy unseeded player that is floating around, like maybe an Andreescu or someone. I think if Andreescu's unseeded, or Osaka, right? If she lost to one of them, you'd be like, well, yeah, okay. But I think she could make a third, fourth round draw, depending. If she doesn't have to play against Garcia in the third round or any of those informed players. But I think a fourth round, I mean, that's realistic. I think Andreescu, the year after she played, the year that she came back and played the US Open and had to defend her points, I think, it must have been last year, she got to the quarters. So I think playing at a tournament you played well at, even if it was just once, will matter. So I think she'll have the good memories, and she'll be pumped up as the defending champion, and she'll get a lot of, she'll probably get a show court, or she'll get one of the main courts because she is the defending champion. And, they'll just replay highlights of last year's run all over and over and over. So that might fuel her a little bit too. But I think fourth round or better would be amazing. First three rounds she loses, that would be a shame. But I think getting to the fourth round would be a pass. Anything more would be great, but I'm not expecting her to do anything more than fourth round maximum. And to be honest, I want to see her. I want to see her sort of see where she actually falls, because I think her ranking clearly has been propped up by that one big win, and I want to see where she lies. If she gets to the fourth round, she might drop down to 50 in the world, and you're like, okay, that's a good place to restart. You're about 50 in the world. If she loses the first round or second round, then she's going to drop down to like 100, and you're like, oh, okay. So I think this is it's going to be a real interesting test to see where she does fall, because I don't think if she goes back to back, then she's going to stay in the top 10 or top 20. But I think
Yeah.
I'm kind of like when she said that she's looking forward to coming back from scratch and all that stuff and starting again.
Yeah,
I am too, because I've heard so many comments about her, good and bad, over the last 12 months, and getting asked the question about her all the time. It'd be nice to be like, okay, now she's in the, she's ranked where she should be. So I'm happy. I'm excited for her to kind of do her thing. And if she loses, she loses. And people are going to say what they say. And if she doesn't win it, people are going to also probably say that she's no good. Even if she makes the quarterfinals, it's going to be she can't win. So I'm excited to see her play, but then also more excited to see what she does and how she looks after it. I think that's where she lies after it, because that's where she'll be. Her ranking will be more accurate after it.
Yeah, agreed. It'll be a lot more accurate, only because we'll get an indicator of like, I guess, how she looked without the US Open win, how is she looking. So yeah, for sure. Like, it's an interesting one because I feel like she did look quite good against in Cincinnati, but like, is she going to replicate that form that she had last year at the US Open? Or the run is pretty unlikely, but she obviously has some good memories there. As you said, it's a little bit disappointing to hear her talk as if, it's basically a done deal that she's not going to win it. It'd be nice, but maybe sometimes, like, Rafa says a similar thing. He's like, "Oh, I'll just take it. I'll see how it goes, but we'll see." But then deep down, we know that he's like, "No, I'm going to win this." So maybe she's got that. I don't know whether that's how she works at all, but it's going to be interesting for sure to see how she gets on, and I'm intrigued for sure. I mean, I'm hoping that she has some good form as a Brit, but you just don't know. Kasatkina is one that you're pretty high on. I know Kasatkina. I mean, she's been in some decent form in San Jose, won it. Hasn't been in great form the last couple of weeks. I mean, what's the expectations for her? I mean, is it to make like a quarterfinal? Is it to go even further? I mean, can she go further? Does she have the ability at this current time to do it?
Oh, well, she's playing this week, so I'm excited to see her play. Like, she was one of those players that decided, kind of like Dimitrov before he pulled out today, of like, I didn't play well last week or the week before. I need form. So it's cool. It's interesting to see how she plays this week. But it's kind of like Medvedev. It's like, well, she played. I can't remember. She's lost to two good players in the last 2 weeks. So it hasn't been like the worst. Like, she won San Jose and then made the top 10, one of her biggest trophies, biggest milestones, and then, ticked a lot of boxes that, at the start, it's almost, she peaked at the start of the US Open series, and then the last 2 weeks haven't been great. But, I mean, if she plays well this week, I'll be back on she's the dark horse to win. I would maybe as a fan, that's why I'm getting overexcited. But I think when she won San Jose, I was like, oh, okay. You had players like, Swiatek not playing great. And then you had, all those other top 10 players that was sort of okay, but not, great. She beat Badosa along the way. And I was like, oh, okay, this is something. And then the last 2 weeks, I've kind of, it's same with Berrettini. It was the same as Berrettini, just kind of like, oh, he might be able to do something. And then lost. And I was like, oh, maybe not. But yeah, again, if she plays well this week, maybe makes a semi. I mean, I'm a little worried if she wins the whole thing. It's like, now you got to go play the big tournament next week. But I mean, she's got some form. She's won a trophy on the hard courts in America. So that's one more than, I guess, all those other players that we mentioned. So out of the top 10, I mean, her, Swiatek being the number one, I think, with Sabalenka doing well, okay, last week. And then Halep, Kasatkina is the next one, and Pegula. Like, I would put her above, Muguruza. I don't know how she's still in the top 10. And then you've got, Jabeur, Badosa, Sakkari, and Kontaveit. I'd put her above. I put Kasatkina above them as well. Yeah, I mean, she could make the quarters or a semi. I mean, she's played well at Indian Wells. She made a final. A slower hard court, American hard court. So yeah, I was more confident 3 weeks ago. More bullish on her 3 weeks ago, but if she does well this week, I'll be back I'll be back campaigning for her again. But I think she's. I mean, she ticked a lot of boxes in San Jose that I was like, okay, there's a chance she could have a deep run. She made the French Open semis, lost to Swiatek. So yeah, I mean, she could do well, but just like everyone else, she could lose in the first round. So,
very true.
No, I trust her a little bit more than the other top 10s.
Yeah, no, I can see why. Before I ask you your prediction for when we're in dark horse, are there any other players that you want to touch upon?
I mean, not really. I mean, you can talk about Keys, Kvitova, and Raducanu, and Bencic, and Fernandez, and Haddad, but they're all in the same boat of like, oh well, yeah, they could all have runs, but then they could all lose. It's Pliskova, like all these players, but they're all sort of in the same boat of like, yeah, they played well here before, or they've played well recently, but they're going to play well this year. Like, who knows? So yeah, there's not too many other players outside of that. I mean, Andreescu, Serena,
Osaka,
Osaka, those three, former champs. You've always got to watch out for them. But again, 48 hours from now, we'll know where they sit and who they have to play. Yeah. It might be a different story if they have to play Halep in the first round. It's like, okay, well, Andreescu's not going to go as far as we think because she lost. She's going to play against someone in the first round like that. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, there's not too many players outside of that. Even there's not that many players in the seeds or outside the seeds that, which again, that's just setting up for a random champion.
Yeah, agreed. So if I had to push you, then who are you backing to win it, and your dark horse as well?
I'm going to go Halep. I think Halep has got form. She's been a champion. It's kind of like Medvedev. I pick Medvedev because I trust him. I trust Halep. And if she lets me down, that's fine. I'm like, oh, well, if she let me down, that means there's someone totally out of the blue who's done something. And I think we all get a pass. Like last year, I don't think anyone picked Raducanu from the start of the tournament. So it's like, okay, if something like that happens again and we all get our predictions wrong, we don't all look that silly if someone random does something. So I'll go with Halep because she's the easiest to pick. Then she's the most I trust her the most. And then as a dark horse, I mean, Garcia is probably the obvious one, but I would love to see Osaka do something crazy as an unseeded dark horse. Like I think I picked her at the end of last year because I thought she'd come back good. She did well in Miami, and I don't know. It's just she wins this tournament every couple of years, and I don't know. I think that was it like 2020 she won. She won in 2018. 2 years later, I'll go Osaka as a really out there pick. Maybe not really out there, but more out there than maybe more than just a dark horse. She's a bit more of a complete. It would be a complete surprise. It'd be a good surprise, but yeah, I'm going to go with I'll go with Osaka.
Yeah, I'm hoping Osaka finds some form. I mean, I don't know. I just don't know what's quite going on with her this year. Obviously she's had some mental health struggles as well, so that hasn't been great. But it's good to see her back in a better frame of mind. That's the most important thing. But tennis-wise, it's just I don't know. I just can't quite put my finger on it. A lot of people are thinking that, saying maybe looking kind of like a bit more sluggish and looking a bit heavier than she did before. I mean, I don't really know if I see that at all. Or just saying that, look, she's just not been training as much as she has. So conditioning wise, she's just not quite up there in terms of moving around. On the hard courts, though, she should move okay because I don't think she's ever moved that well on grass or clay generally because she's just struggled with the movement, and she's still pretty young. I mean, she's not super old or anything. Still not incredibly experienced on those courts, but on a hard court, obviously, and the power she possesses, the ability, the angles, like you'd expect her to do something, but just hasn't quite clicked this year. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, as to what's been going on?
Yeah, I think it's more just the mentality side. I think, and not playing matches. I mean, she skipped Wimbledon because it wasn't worth points. And she's had some tough draws. I think French Open she played, I can't remember who she played in the first round or second round. She lost.
Three was Tormo.
Who was it?
Anisimova, yeah.
It was one of them.
It was Anisimova, yeah.
And it's like she hasn't been like, and that's because she's not in the top. If maybe she played more, she would have been up the ranks, and she wouldn't have had to play those players. But yeah, I think I think it's a lot of it is mental side of it. I mean, she's had breaks from last year. She had breaks, for mental health and all that stuff as well. So I was a little concerned when Serena, because like I follow her on Twitter and she does post. She doesn't hold back. She tells everyone what she's thinking. Serena retiring, announcing her retirement. She I think she tweeted something like and she lost that day as well. I think there's a lot of correlation to that. What she kind of gives away what she's thinking on social media, and you can kind of, I think she said something like it's a bad day and she had lost, but she also Serena retired, and she's a huge Serena fan. So I don't know. Will she get wrapped up in the whole Serena retirement thing and not focus on her own game? Maybe. So I'm a little worried for that. But game wise, she might be a little one-dimensional now, whereas I think before Barty came along and sort of won slams and took over the number one, everyone was playing like Serena played, for that 10 years or 20, 15 years of big serving and big forehands and backhands and great returns. And that's how you win slams. Then Barty's come along and shown that, you can have a bit of variety and that kind of wins stuff. And then you've got players that have taken that Barty model and, be able to slice it and come to the net and do all these other things. And I don't think Osaka's adapted to that. Like she's still going crash and bash, big serves, big forehands. And if that doesn't work, she doesn't really have another plan. Yeah, she's not really good at. She's not great at the net. She doesn't really have a defensive game. She wasn't known for her speed around the court. She is. It's very reliant on the first serve, the big serves, the aces. And if that's not working, she doesn't have a plan B. And that's, I think, getting like maybe 5 years ago when she was playing players that had the same thing. It's like, who's returning better, who's serving better, and that's who wins. But now with players that are coming through that have a more defensive game and have more variety, she's kind of losing, kind of getting left behind without, she's not adapting. So, yeah, and again, she just hasn't played enough. You're not going to be able to do much if you play, 5 matches here and there. And I'm not sure how many matches she played total, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was over 20, 25 matches, whereas most players at the moment have played, 50 matches. So you can't play half the time and expect to be up the top when you're playing against people who have played every other week. So, yeah, and she has pulled out of tournaments. Wimbledon, if that was worth points, she would have played. That might have made a difference. She's never been really good on the clay, so I guess she kind of checks out during that season. But she has shown signs. Like when she goes to the Miami final, it was like, oh, okay, she's back. This is good. We want to see this. But then she didn't really do much the last few weeks. I think she got injured like 2 weeks ago. She was she retired. So it was like, oh, okay, not again. So yeah, she's a tricky one because when she plays her best. And I think tennis is better with her at the top. Halep's back in the top 10, which looks like we all remember when, Osaka and Halep were in the top 10 and that only a few years ago. And that kind of
feels safe.
It makes the top 10 look better. Like, cause we're all like, oh yeah, we know that these players can do this. She's a Grand Slam champion. She's young. It's not like she's 30 or anything. 35. It's like she's still got plenty of years if she wants to, and she's very popular. And some people don't like her, but she's very, very popular. So it's like, well, she promotes the game. So I really want to see her get back, but which is why maybe I'm hopeful that she'll win the US Open, and then it would be like, oh, okay, Osaka's back, Halep's playing well, Swiatek's up the top, and then there's a bunch of other players. Okay, let's see how that looks. Because with Barty gone, I think we're all kind of searching for, and Swiatek filled the gap. It was like, we're all, and Serena going as well. It's like, okay, we need some certainty in the WTA. Where's the certainty coming from? We can't just have no one, people winning everything all the time, random things all the time. Like, we're all looking for that. I mean, that stability. Who's the reliable pick?
Spin the roulette wheel.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's probably, I mean, look, it's going to, the US Open, everything that we've said for the last hour and a half is, we'll probably look back at this and it all was the opposite.
I was thinking of that. I was like, especially on the WTA side, it's just like completely wrong. Next thing you know, Kudermetova wins the US Open.
Yeah.
Yeah. didn't even mention
exactly.
Classic. But yeah, thanks, Cam. I appreciate it. Thanks for being on as always. Great to catch up, and yeah, we'll try and definitely catch up. But either post US Open or at some point, I'm sure again this year. But yeah, guys, if you haven't already, which I'm sure you have, do go and check out Tennis Talk with Cam Williams on YouTube, and also on Twitter, and they've got a good Discord channel as well. Check that out. And yeah, loads of other platforms as well. So make sure you check him out. And of course, you'll be streaming every day, multiple matches, I'd imagine, at least.
Yeah, I'll probably be. I'll be live during it. Most of the time, if there's a good match on, I'll probably be live. So
exactly, yeah. So make sure you you check that out as well. But thanks again, mate. Really appreciate it. And
cheers.
yeah, let's see how our predictions hold up.
Yeah.